Today I want to talk a little bit more about Ernest Hemingway's short story, one of his most magnificent short stories, A Clean, Well-Lighted Place. This short story is one of the most famous of his, even though it's really one of the most depressing, in one sense, story that he ever wrote. It's not an angry story per se, but a strong story, a powerful story, with lots of ideas packed inside. We can see Ernest Hemingway's great skill in writing. His idea was like an iceberg, that stories and literature should only have a little piece above the top of the surface. Underneath the story is this huge area that we can't see, but we have to guess or imagine or think about. So what I want to talk about is what's underneath there. What is he suggesting? What is he giving? What is he presenting below the surface of the story? The story is a simple one that focuses on basically three characters. It starts with an old man who is drinking brandy in a bar, a clean, well-lighted place in Spain. We don't know the exact city, but Hemingway went to Spain many times. He loved Spain, he loved Spanish. Hemingway spoke many languages. He spoke French and Spanish and bits and pieces of other languages, Italian also. And he spent a lot of time in Spain and set one of his greatest novels there, partially there, The Sun Also Rises, which is about bullfighting. But this story, set in Spain, has the first main character of an old man. And we learn very quickly the old man tried to commit suicide out of despair, even though he has lots of money. So we know from the beginning of the story something's wrong, right? Something's off. And this idea of despair is something that goes all through the story and really through a lot of Hemingway's other writing. The second character is a young man who is a waiter, and he is, as he says, I am full of confidence, right? He's a young guy who's working as a waiter in the cafe, and he wants to get off early and go home to his wife, right? He doesn't want to keep working and working and working. He wants the old man to leave so he can go home and be with his wife, right? Fair enough. In the middle, though, is the main character of the story, which is the old waiter. The old waiter seems to be in between these two characters, right? The young waiter with energy, confidence, a wife, a job, and the old man who is filled with despair and drinks until he falls asleep every night. The story then is less a story than a kind of meditation about different stages of life. Hemingway thought a lot about philosophical ideas, about the meaning of life, or, as in this story, the meaninglessness of life. And he looked at what it means to be alive at different stages of life. There's the young man, there's the middle-aged man, there's the old man. And in this story, his picture of life is somewhat negative and somewhat disappointed with how things are. So let's look at that just a little bit more. The young man is maybe the simplest character. He's confident, full of life, full of energy, wants to go home to his wife. There's not much more to him. He's a kind of superficial person, right? And the old man, we don't really know what he thinks, except that his action of trying to commit suicide is mentioned. But he's a kind of symbol of despair and frustration in life. The middle-aged man, the waiter in the middle, though, is also trying to balance, right, his position. He knows the young man, but he knows the old man both. He understands both the energy of youth and the frustration of aging. And he's very unsure. He's very confused, almost trapped between these two stages of life. And he has a sense of duty, but he feels lonely. He has a good attitude to work, but he also has his own personal despair. The story divides in two then, the beginning scene at the cafe, and then we follow the middle-aged waiter as he goes for a drink, tries to find a place to go after the work time is over. He wanders through his village or the city where he lives, and he's looking for a good place to have a drink. Not a cheap place, not a bodega, as it's called, but he wants a clean place, a place with light, where he can relax, have a drink, and enjoy himself. But he doesn't find it. He goes to a place and starts to think in his mind about many, many things. And his thoughts and his ideas at the second half of the story is really the most important part. We get to read what is inside his mind, right? What he is feeling, what he's thinking as he looks for a place to relax, which he doesn't find. The central part on the very last page, if you look at the story again, the very last page gives us his idea of nothingness. In Spanish, the word for nothing is nada. And it's a very strong word with many, many different meanings, philosophical meanings, right? Of course, we use the word nothing, and Spanish people use the word nada all the time. But here, it's really a philosophical meaning of nothing. What is the meaning of life? He's looking for the meaning, but he can't find it. All he gets is nada. And at the end of the story, he takes the Lord's Prayer, which is one of the common prayers, and he looks at that prayer, or he thinks of the prayer, but he changes it, completely changes it. So if you can look at the handout, I put down the original Lord's Prayer, which is a common prayer everybody knows, and I put down Hemingway's version. So let me read both the original Lord's Prayer and Hemingway's rewriting of that prayer, and we'll think a little bit more about what does that mean, what is he trying to present to us about religion and the meaning of life. So here's the original Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. This is a poem that I said in church when I was a boy. We went to church, and it's maybe one of the poems that connects all Christians very, very closely. Almost everybody knows this poem and can recite it. Even me, I haven't been back to church in a long time, I'll confess, but I can still remember the words to this prayer very easily. But let's look on the right-hand side at what Hemingway is doing here, right? Hemingway is taking this prayer and changing it or examining it in a different way. So let me read Hemingway's version, which comes from the end of the story. Our nada, who art in nada, nada be thy name. Thy kingdom nada, thy will be nada in nada, as it is in nada. Give us this nada, our daily nada, and nada us our nada, as we nada our nadas. And nada us not into nada, but deliver us from nada, pues nada. So he doesn't even finish the poem, right? It just, there's too many nadas, there's nothing and nothing and nothing. So there's a, I suppose, a kind of comic element, a funny element to this, right? It's a kind of parody of something which is very serious, but it also is a serious rewriting of this common prayer. And what I think Hemingway wants to tell us by rewriting this poem is that we need to think about the meaning of things, right? The prayer is again and again recited in a way that people don't think about, right? We just do things without thinking about it. But Hemingway wants us to think. What is the meaning? Our nada, who art in nada, he wants us to think. What do these words mean? Father, heaven, trespass, daily bread. We need to think about that. If we don't think about it, if we don't understand it, if we don't feel it, it's meaningless. It doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't give us anything. So this poem and the prayer is somehow negative, but I think it's also a warning from Hemingway that we should wake up and think about the language that we use, the religion that we believe in, and the actions that we undertake every single day. This is a kind of philosophical point of view which came from, or started to be popular in the 1920s and 1930s, the idea of existentialism. Existentialism is a philosophy from Europe, and mainly from France, which says nothing has meaning until we put meaning into it. So, prayer to God in heaven has no meaning unless we make it meaningful, right? We create meaning. And the idea of existentialism is to create meaning ourselves. We shouldn't just get meaning from our parents or from our religion or from our society or our job. Humans have the ability to choose, and by choosing they create meaning. They make meaning happen. So Hemingway, in this kind of depressing story, is also giving us a big piece of advice, which is think about what we're doing. Create meaning by looking at meaninglessness. Okay? So this philosophy of existentialism was very popular in 30s, 40s, 50s, especially after World War II, became a common idea in France. And Hemingway lived in France, in Paris, for a long time, and was deeply influenced by European philosophy. So this story, I think, is a strong examination of the inside of experience, which is part of what modernism did, and it also gives us a kind of criticism of religion and a criticism of thoughtlessness. At the same time, it gives us a really powerful way to rethink or recreate meaning in our life. So I hope that all of you will find your clean, well-lighted place. Hemingway wants us to search in our life for the best place to drink, to live, to eat, to be, right? A clean, well-lighted place is a safe place, a place we feel comfortable, a place we feel good. So, good luck finding your clean, well-lighted place.